We're back here on our program, Jones and Company, and we are discussing a number of national issues today with the Honorable George A. Smith. Godfrey?
Mr. Smith, you sat in Sir Lyndon's cabinet for 10 years.
More than that.
A little more, yeah.
You were very much aware of public policy. What was the governing philosophy of the Progressive Liberal Party during the pending years?
Well, the party's philosophy was shaped by what we call the core values. And the core values are very simple, that people are more important than things. People have a right to certain things, shelter, food, all those things. It's embodied in the social teachings of the Christian churches.
Sure.
And that's natural, because don't forget that the founders of the PRP, initial founders, they were all closely connected to the church. Henry Taylor, Cyril Stevenson were very active members of the Catholic Church. And the Baptist values, something that I jokingly told somebody a couple of years ago, that he's Baptist, but he doesn't understand what the Baptist values are. And that's our problem. The values that we stood for in terms of trade union movement, the rights of workers, automatic, the right of caring for the elderly and all that, those are embodied in what is known as the core values of the Progressive Liberal Party. But people who got involved in those days got involved for a purpose. They actually wanted to make a difference in the lives of people. And that is why most of us in that period had this firm commitment to a place, and on the way there, they were brought up in that place. Exumians had this special relationship that came out of the communities. For instance, when I was a little boy, my mothers would drop me off somewhere, and I was home to wherever I ended up being. I heard lessons from men like Arthur Hanna, what it is to be an Ackland's man. It meant something. Now, so people who got involved, the Lutherans who got involved in first frontline politics, Philip Bettel and George Thompson and those, they were committed to see something about Elutra continue to happen and make Elutra an important ingredient in the Bahamas. Today people decide, well, I want to get in the House of Assembly, so let me find out which one of these parties will help me get there. Not I want to join the party because I believe in some things that this organization stands for. You see, I believe, like both you and Mr. Jones, that I believe being a Roman Catholic tells me some things about what I ought to do and behave in all levels of my life. That is the way you have been taught in your denomination, and that's certainly the way the Baptists have been taught. It requires of you to behave a particular way. And so then you get involved, and you try to manifest that behavior. Today, people get involved in things, they have no idea why. They just want the glory of it, and gentlemen, this country has tremendous problems. For instance, we got problems in terms of an unfair distribution of public lands. Mind you, in 2010, a House committee produced a document on the distribution of public lands, public and crown lands, as a means to empower people economically. that has never been implemented. And it was signed off by both political parties. We have to find ways of lowering the cost of living in this country for poor people. We gotta deal with the cost of living. The cost of living is ridiculously high. We have to find concessions to empower young Bahamians,
Entrepreneurs.
over and above that which is available to non-Bahamians. Being a Bahamian is supposed to be an advantage in the country to do business. But all of these things we need to do. What we need to do in terms of education, guaranteeing, the only way you could improve the quality of education in this country is by improving the quality of the teachers. And that should be our concentration, to have more proficient teachers throughout the country. We need to really come to grips with the fact that the poorer you are in this country, the
more assistance you
the
need.
possibility of having any level of health care is almost non-existent. We could do better than that. We could deal with our migrant problem. But we can't deal with it if we don't admit the gravity of it. And the gravity of it goes beyond just the Haitian nationals who are here. And because of the unfortunate circumstances that exist in the country, we do have to do things about that.
Godfrey used to talk about 40-year-old problems. Now we have 50-year-old problems.
Yes. And what we have to, Wendell, is this. There are people if you go to any island in the Bahamas today, they'll tell you about foreigners doing work that Bahamians could do. But that's the only way the fella say he can invest his money. We don't have enough courage to tell the fella, we're going to write the rules. We in the Bahamas can write the rules for you to come to live and to invest here. If we do that, people will still come, but they will come knowing that you have a set of rules that you intend to enforce, and they have to live by it. And you have to give an advantage in what you do to Bahamians who will give.
You're suggesting that the quality of governance has been steadily declining in the country over the last 53 years of majority rule? Is that what you're saying?
Not 53 years. Last 20-something year, half that period of time.
Okay.
And even during that period of time, sometimes we were persuaded to pull back on some things. I thought it was a mistake then, but I understood why, to pull back on national service. I thought it was a mistake when we stopped using immigration to get companies to train young Bahamians to do jobs. After 1967, a whole cadre of Bahamians, a large number of Bahamians went away, came back knowing a job will be here for them. And the job was the Bahamianization of the civil service put thousands of young people in upward mobility, but competent young people. The civil service today is not remotely as competent as it was 30 years ago or 40 years ago. Teachers today don't have that sense of commitment to education. They just want to bide their time, and in some cases they think that they are I would have thought that the most prized people in the Ministry of Education should be the teachers. But sometimes you treat them as if they are adversaries. But they're the people who got to educate the children, and yet they don't feel that sense of importance.
Mr. Smith, you mentioned earlier that the wind of change was blowing over the British Empire, particularly in the Caribbean and
Africa.
All right? And the leaders of the time, what I call era relevant, all right? I think part of the problem we have today is that the leaders of today are not era relevant, based on the realities that you pointed out not being addressed. What is your view to that?
Fine, I wouldn't quite describe it the way you do, but I understand what you're saying. And I think you're absolutely right, because all of the problems we have in this society can only be solved if we have certainly the commitment to do it.
To understand it?
To understand what the problem is. But very importantly, all of them, there's one common component. The economy has to grow.
Yes.
The economy has to grow so that all those things could be made possible. Yeah. For instance, we find, you know, our recovery. A hurricane hit Tonga the other day. The next day they were up and running. Now what it is that they could do, what makes them more capable of recovering from something? And we haven't recovered yet from hurricanes that hit us in Abercrombie, Bahama several years ago. We have a criminal justice system in this country that guarantees failure of young men. I believe that half the young men up in Fox Hill Prison have been there because they were the victim of trumped up cases, bad evidence, and the inability to afford defense. Sure. And when we played around with having a public defender system, it just couldn't get the support that it should have. And so we've written off a whole lot of young men because we can't find a formula to rescue them.
You know what Wendell calls that? Systems failure. Oh, yeah. That's his words. Systems failure.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Smith, I was watching a video the other day on what the Singaporeans call MPH. Their country thrives on MPH. M for meritocracy, P for pragmatism, and H for honesty. Meritocracy. Mm-hmm. Doing things in a pragmatic way, and honesty. Mr. Smith, in the Bahamas, people don't merit things anymore. You know?
No. And you know, you're absolutely right. It's one of the most successful societies. I've had the joy of going there on a number of cases, Singapore. But I've been reading about some countries that were 40 years ago, they were practicing genocide. Today they are regarded as successful countries, Rwanda and others in the world.
Yes.
I think if Bahamians study a little bit more, For instance, Nigeria is one of the wealthiest countries in the world. But we are conditioned, of course, not to look to Africa to see the tremendous success, or to Asia. When you look at potentially the 10 strongest economies in the world, you'll find that you got Indonesia, you've got Nigeria,
South Korea.
South Korea. You've got Asian countries, you've got African countries, Mexico. When we think of Mexico, we don't think of potentially one of the strongest economies by the year 2050. And I believe, I firmly believe this, that there are no problems in this Bahamas that we assemble the right number of thinking Bahamians in the room and say, come up with solutions.
Mr. Smith, politicians responsible for half of the problems we have,
I agree with you. I consider myself a fairly successful Minister of Agriculture Fisheries. We did some things. We wrote the fishing laws in such a way that the man who used to use bleach grew to respect what we wanted done because we convinced him that we're preserving an industry that he's interested in.
You build the parking houses.
No, the output in agriculture during
Those
this.
parking houses, they no longer.
No.
But the production of agriculture during the period he was director increased every year by 10, 15 some percent. Suddenly politicians decide they're geniuses about agriculture, decide that they know the rules, decide that economists in
the World Bank.
in the World Bank don't know what he's talking about anymore, unless you're a politician. You know, they're suddenly the experts.
So bad policies are responsible for the majority of the problems that you are enumerating today.
Yeah.
Politicians interfering in where teachers are to be assigned. Now, what politician, unless he has maybe a Carl Francis or Winston Coakley, could pretty much say a school like the school in Morstangs would need this kind of teacher because they're personally familiar and they're teachers. They were teachers. But today, transfers are determined by people who are administrators in the ministry who never was in the classroom and politicians. You know, a couple of years ago I went to the Ministry of Works, hail somebody there. And I'm listening to this fellow explaining to the engineer about what kind of road he want built on a particular island. I said, what the hell do you know about a road, man?
Actually been there?
Huh?
You actually been to the island?
I thought I gave him the credit he was there. But what does he know about building the road? What did I know about how to persuade the Bahamian fishermen that if you're interested in crawfish, you got to go to that part of the Bahamas. If you want to catch snappers, you go to the Exuma chain. You know, different species, different location. It's all there. But today, and in the past number of years, you know, well, we have an industry where we gutted the professionals who used to be in it, Ministry of Tourism, travel experts. They just listen to what the minister says and go on, you know, and no innovation, no imagination.
How we are going to fix these problems that you are talking about?
I think the Bahamian people have got to decide. You said something on your program earlier today, that if I go to the grocery store and they can't find something for me to carry the stuff in, I'll tell the fella, bye-bye. I go into another shop that will at least consider that you know, you gotta package the stuff for the fella. I mean, put in a meeting people's hand or in a lip. Is that what we have come to? No, people have got to decide, I want to hear ideas. How are we going to grow the economy? How are we going to use the wealth of our land to empower Bahamians? How we're going to make that leap from D to C to B and then A. Other countries did it. How are we going to guarantee that we can provide in this country by just proper management of the resources, a better standard of health care? If people know that, for instance, crime prevention has a lot to do, crime prevention, for instance, and respect for law and order. People they don't want any murders, but it's okay to be rude on the street or to drive on the street like you have no regard for the safety of other people. Well, if we don't respect this law, why could we expect other people to respect some law that you may think is important? You know, coming to work on time, being prepared to stay a little later, putting something in beyond just what you think you're getting out of it, you know? The public has got to decide what they are prepared to settle for. And if they don't like you, if they don't like the way it's going, you can do something about it.
Your generation has moved off the scene in terms of politics, and they're moving off. And we've lost a whole lot of leaders over the last few decades. Yes? And the mindset is different today, Mr. Smith, from when you were elected in '68.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay? Politicians behave differently from when you were a minister or you were elected in '68. Some of the things that you're talking about are, quite frankly, irrelevant to young people, people who are 18 and even older than that, who are themselves changing the Bahamas. And so how do you imbue people with the values?
You have to
that
show them an advantage for them. There, if I was a young person today, and me and my buddies want to go out for an evening, the present atmosphere that exists here, I wouldn't feel safe. Because I could point to instances where young people who are out are entrapped by being blamed for things, in some cases, trumped up cases against them. So I would want that fixed. Now, those who want to be leaders must point that there is an advantage to those same young people by improving these things. There is an advantage to them, a safety net to them, if more people learn to develop a great appreciation for law and order, respect for the laws, respect for, and there's an advantage in being courteous. It has to be pointed out to them because, to a large extent, a lot of people may not know better. But the same way people years ago learned, Bahamian people learned a lot.
It's back to education,
Yeah.
how we educate our people.
And it has to be more than just educating in school. We learn a lot about how to behave.
Yes.
We learn how to treat foreigners. We learn to treat them so well. I mean, people in the hotels, they treated people so well that those people kept coming back. And in some cases, the people they ran into, children became the beneficiary of relationships. So we do know.
I came across a young man the other day who said that you expect, people like you expect the Bahamas to be the same as it was in the 60s and 70s. And this is a new time, a new era. The world has changed.
Only foolish people.
The world this is a different place now.
Yes, but and we're not blind, you know. Just because you have a few years on you, don't mean you're blind. It means that you recognize that things aren't quite the way they could have been, they should be, and we all, no matter how old we are, could be to some extent some instrument for change, if only by pointing out. Because I still talk to young people. They're the friends of my children, and I give them advice. I give them the same advice that I wisely took when I was their age from older people. I don't know yet how to call somebody who I think to be, ma'am, or I refer to people, yes ma'am, no ma'am, miss so-and-so. Those courteous things that they think by being familiar makes them your equal.
Yeah.
They take this familiarity, this thing which we have learned some bad things from this wholly familiar society called the United States. And then when they're exposed and they have to stand up on their own, they're not equipped because they have not been taught how to, the value of being courteous, politeness, all those things yield much to people of my generation.
And value systems change.
Yes, and things could change, but the essence of decency and respect for law, politeness, and all those things, they are endearing, They last forever.
Mr. Smith,
Singapore, same Singapore you talk about, the manners they display today is the same manners that was hewn into them by the founder of that country.
Mr. Smith, it is said that we are in a period of where our people feel entitled, a period of entitlement. And Jones talked about meritocracy, all right? Many people feel that they're entitled to certain things, and so they don't have to work hard. The old values of hard work and honesty are not applicable.
And then you point out examples of the successes in the society. And then they realize that the very things that they want, that those people who are successes in the society have because they worked hard.
Yeah.
So they do, you know, I don't think our people are foolish, and I don't think young people are foolish. I think some of them try it on to see if they can get away with it, but they know. They know that it isn't going to come easy for them. It didn't come easy for their parents. And if they want to have these, what they think they're entitled to, and there are things that human beings are entitled to, and the society they belong to should provide those things. But if they want a higher standard of living, they've got to recognize that they must contribute to that. And they can't go around expecting to meet with success while envying people who had some success. Yeah. Like I was in a place the other day, and this fellow was having an argument with his buddy about who time is over. And I heard my name called and a couple other names called, and I tapped the fellow on the shoulder and says, you know that man you with today isn't going to be successful by your saying, I got to go. The only way he can be successful is if he work on it. Yeah. You see, your problem is, I told the fellow, your problem is you want to get rid of some people who have some success that they're proud of and that you could see. And you figure your fella going to become successful by what? By the failure of someone else? You know?
Let's take this final break here on our program. We'll come right back.